I've spoken before about how my favorite part of getting to know congregants is their discovery stories. When and how they first learned of Unitarian Universalism or joined a congregation, and why. Tom shared just such a discovery story by the Reverend Nathan Walker. It illustrates just one way in which Unitarian Universalism is a liberating and life-saving faith. I look back on those simple exchanges and wonder if this small group of people felt like they were planting seeds in a drought-stricken land. Little did they know what they would reap, how the very act of planting the fellowship saved my life literally. A small group gathered and provided for me an oasis in the desert of despair. I was hungry for belonging, and they fed me hospitality. I was thirsty for self-worth, and they offered me a cup of acceptance. I was a stranger, and they welcomed me. Together, we knew freedom. Spanish-born philosopher George Santayana once said an oft-used phrase these days, those who cannot remember the past are condemned to repeat it. And civil rights campaigner and feminist writer Rita Mae Brown said, insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. Together, they point to our human tendency to fall into patterns of behavior that are unhelpful at best, and perhaps counterproductive or catastrophic at worst. I hope to speak about willful ignorance another day. The newly re-elected anarchist-in-chief and his minions have unleashed a host of terrorizing threats to people, institutions, and the planet. And many millions, including us, are afraid. Our usual Unitarian Universalist, and by which I mean predominantly white, upper middle class, highly educated and intellectual progressives, our usual way of responding or reacting to challenges is to assume good intentions, allow for people's ignorance or misunderstanding or lack of clarity, giving someone a pass purely because of their inherent worth and dignity, or engaging in calmed, reasoned, well-thought-out arguments. But given the prevalence of false equivalencies and the extreme nature of the threats we and others now face, our usual benefit of the doubt responses seem insanely inadequate. Where is the fire of our commitment, our hunger and passion for justice? Where is our courage? We can't help but be focused on the present and future, and our fears are justified. By any measure of love and compassion, the proposed policies, the already enacted executive orders, the unqualified people confirmed to carry out those policies are morally repugnant and contrary to the religious values professed not just by us, but even and especially by many, if not most, of the people who put him in office. What are we to do? What is love asking of us in this moment? Our choir reminded us of Jason Shelton's words that from lights of days remembered burns a beacon bright and clear, guiding hands and hearts and spirits into faith set free from fear. Our tradition carries with it principles and values and history that can guide our faith to freedom. From the stories of our living rings a song both brave and free, calling pilgrims still to witness to the life of liberty. Our own stories, too, are rich with wisdom for how we have shown courage and overcome struggles. Our own stories, too, can inspire us to witness to the fulfillment of our dreams. From the dreams of youthful vision come a new prophetic voice, which demands a deeper justice built by our courageous choice. These dreams are universal and hold a prophetic power that calls us to continue to show courage in the work for a more just world. When the fire of commitment sets our mind and soul ablaze, when our hunger and our passion meet to call us on our way, when we live with deep assurance of the flame that burns within, then our promise finds fulfillment and our future can begin. When we commit ourselves to the values and principles of this movement, we can live with assurance that the promised land, the beloved community, the more just world of which we dream will be fulfilled. So from where are we to draw strength, solace, courage? From the beacon bright and clear, from the light of days remembered, from the stories of our living. And so we reflect today on those stories and the necessity of telling them. In accompanying notes for our Time for All Ages, April Rosario provides some background on the word Sankofa. It is a phrase that encourages learning from the past to inform the future, reaching back to move forward and lifting as we climb. We as human beings are not just made of stories, she wrote, but in fact are writing our own story with every choice and decision we make. Like the child in the story, how can we find our way when we're unsure of what lies ahead? Rosario's response is, religions like ours tells us we need to know where we have been, to know where we want to go, and who we want to be. And Reverend Alicia Ford concurred in our pastoral prayer when we pause to remember who we are, when we hear our story, hear and see each other into existence, into community, when we take a moment to embrace, to practice a different way of being, when we answer the call of love, then we are living in the promise of building the world we dream about. Stretch our minds, she wrote, into the future and imagine what may be if we were to build a new way of being. Not someday, but beginning today. Taking courage with these hands and hearts to make real the dream of a more equitable world, to journey together, seeking to be transformed even as we transform. Fulfilling the promise of healing a fragmented world, laboring not just in hope, but also in love. It got a damn sight harder to heal a fragmented world. But it's what our faith calls us to do. This is what's possible by sharing our individual and collective stories. Reverend Walker's discovery story described a pivotal moment in his life that changed the trajectory of his life, saved his life. Each of us has such stories, each of us, multiple stories of encountering and committing ourselves to people, organizations, or causes that in the end change us, help form our identity, make us who we are. What have those been for you? Who have those been for you? Rather than focus on our fears of the future, our faith tells us now more than ever we need to tell and retell our individual and shared stories to remember who we are and how we got here, the struggles that formed us, and how we got through those hard times. Just as an aside, when I was a hospital chaplain, that was a regular practice, helping people who struggled, helping them identify times in their own lives when they were able to get through hard times, right? To help them move forward. Knowing better who and whose we are. These stories may then guide us in facing future challenges. If you are a parent, you know patience and the need for sacrifice and for clarity. If you're a survivor of sexual assault, you know the anger of violation. If you are a cancer survivor, you know perhaps humility, gratitude, determination, and perhaps grace. If you've lost a loved one to illness, injury, natural disaster, or an act of violence, you know the cost of love. Each of our stories teaches us so much. Lessons that we then bring with us through life, better equipped perhaps for hardship. As the Sankofa bird suggested, we can move ahead with the wisdom we've gained. But we are more than just these stories, these experiences. We still have wants and needs and aspirations and dreams. As Unitarian Universalists, we cultivate a set of shared values. We can and do change the world. If you search online for famous UUs, you will find hundreds of Unitarians, Universalists, and Unitarian Universalists who have played a huge role in shaping life, making life better, innovating, establishing life-affirming and enriching principles and institutions all around the world. This includes many of this country's founders. Clara Barton and the Red Cross, Horace Mann and public education, Whitney Young and the National Urban League, poets, artists, scientists, inventors, public servants, abolitionists, suffragists, Nobel laureates, Supreme Court justices, Congress members and presidents, teachers, nurses, doctors, and journalists. The list goes on and on. Every one of them has a story to go with their lives about who they are and what they value. And so do we. This is who we are. We are change agents. By living out our stories, living out our values, without even trying to influence people, we Unitarian Universalists have a net positive, empowering, life-affirming, challenging but loving effect on our neighbors, on institutions, on cultural norms and expectations. We are small, but we have a loud voice. We gather here each week so that we might know one another's mind, might sing and dream together, commiserate and share beauty with one another. We gather to bring one another hope and love when they are hard to find. And then we bring that worldview, that integrity, that energy back out into the world. It may feel as if we are planting seeds in a drought-stricken land. but let us remember the life-saving nature of this living tradition. May we recognize the truth and the story in our own lives and in lives other than our own. May we hear and honor the truths we all bring as we gather and as we go about our lives. May our past guide our future. Sankofa. As we consider what love is asking of us in this moment, may our looking back help us look forward to what needs to change, what needs to grow, what needs to expand as we write the next chapter in the story of our lives. And together, may we know freedom. Blessed be, and amen.